This is the most played MMOs in 2023 mid-year update, sorted by active players. Let's see what the most played MMOs currently are. I guarantee you WoW's on the list. Classic Hardcore has brought some people into the game.
Hey guys, welcome back. It's Lucky here, and it's now halfway through 2023, so let's talk about the state of the MMO genre and go over the most played MMOs right now. A lot has changed since the last time I made this video. We've seen some MMOs move way up on the list, while others have moved way down. Some major MMOs went into maintenance mode, and others have cranked up the fire. This video is strictly by the numbers, which means I'm not ranking them by quality, simply by active player base size. We'll use active player estimates and Google Trends to determine whether these MMOs are moving up or down on the list. Which MMOs are dying, which MMOs are thriving, let's find out. Holding strong at number 13, EVE Online is a dependable old MMO, released in 2003 but still being actively supported by its developers and its fans. EVE Online is an MMO where
EVE Online is one MMO that was super hyped, had a bad start, but I feel like they've recovered. And now it just seems like a pretty stable game to play. Honestly, I've never played these open space exploration games. But if I ever did, EVE Online would probably be the one that I'd want to try out.
Your goal is to build and upgrade a powerful spaceship so that you can join up with others to vie for control of the most profitable sectors in space.
Did I get
EVE Online is free to play with the option to pay money to do things like access more of the spaceships sooner. It also has an optional sub, and as with most optional subs, fans of the game will often tell you that if you fully intend to enjoy the game, the sub isn't so optional. EVE Online has a fantastic character creator.
You know, I'd rather have a required sub than an optional sub. Because if you're playing the game for free, you're just you're set back at so many points, it doesn't make any sense.
But that matters little, as you will rarely see your character. Your focus is on your ship, and it's what you'll spend most of your time controlling. In EVE Online, players form their own alliances and then battle it out for control of the universe. PvP in EVE Online is high stakes, as when your ship is destroyed, it does not simply respawn. No, you must build it again. The many hours, days, or months worth of material you used to build that ship are now gone.
So EVE Online is essentially a hardcore game. That's what it is, man. You die, you're done. Damn.
Online has made headlines as a result of the massive size and scale of some of the player versus player battles, with thousands of players on either side. EVE Online is often called a spreadsheet simulator, as many players engage in tracking materials and costs diligently. CCP Games finally embraced this and has added an integrated spreadsheet in the game. So how is EVE Online's population health? If we look at Google Trends, we can see how popular a topic EVE Online has been, and we can see that its popularity seems to have peaked in 2009. It's definitely trending down over time, as games typically do after this many years, but with around 250,000 active players, it's far from dead. EVE Online recently overhauled its new player experience and seems to be completely committed to maintaining the game for years to come. SWTOR is holding strong at number 12, despite the fact that SWTOR fans have had a rough year. SWTOR's population is on a fairly steep decline as of late, thanks to content drought, and so it came as no surprise when the developer announced that it was handing the game off to another studio to put it into what appears to be maintenance mode. SWTOR launched in 2011, developed by BioWare and published by EA. This is another
Holy crap, that's a big peak right there. And there's a damn. What's the scale here? Is that 100K?
mode that is now free to play with an optional sub. That optional sub will unlock a lot of things, but most importantly, it will give you access to all of the zones in the game forever, even if you only sub for 1 month and then cancel. Veterans of the game will tell you that if you want to actually experience SWTOR, that's what you'll need to do. SWTOR is probably best known for its amazing class stories that immerse you in the world of Star Wars. The class stories are fully voice acted and are incredibly well fleshed out and written. But before we continue, let's take a second to talk about Rise of Kingdoms, the sponsor of today's video. Rise of Kingdoms is an epic cross-platform strategy
as far as fantasy universes go, Star Wars is one of my favorite, but I have never played any of the MMO versions of Star Wars. I've wanted to, thought about it, never did it. Again, I've always appreciated most like the medieval theme in fantasy and MMOs. That's my favorite fantasy. If I ever played a future-based one, it'd probably be Star Wars.
Their own civilizations. Join the event by clicking on the second link in the pinned comment below. ROK will welcome the arrival of the new Greece civilization, featuring exclusive commanders and special units, adding a new level of excitement to the game. Battles happen in real time on the map. Anyone can join or leave the battle at any time with a simple drag to select, making for a true RTS gameplay experience. See an ally being attacked in your backyard? Send some troops to help your buddy out, or launch a surprise counterattack on the attacker's city. Players will have full control of the layout of their city and a wide range of different aesthetic options to choose from.
Yeah,
All in-game actions take place on a single enormous map inhabited by players and NPCs. No isolated bases or separate battle screens. Download Rise of Kingdoms now by clicking the link in the description below or scanning the QR code on screen right now. And remember to use promo code GREASE for ROK for 20 silver keys. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the video. Perhaps the most unique part of these stories is that your choices actually have an impact on the ending of the story, with up to 3 different endings possible for each class. This is definitely one of the coolest parts about SWTOR. Unfortunately for SWTOR, however, is its last expansion left a lot to be desired, with the community lamenting the fact that it offered barely a few hours of entertainment per faction. It had left the community wondering about the future of the game, but now they know it's being handed.
So their last expansion was their WoD? I guess you could say the SWTOR's last expansion was Warlords of Draenor. So now they have to recover, and it looks like the team's putting it on maintenance, so they're never going to recover. That's great.
Off to another developer. There are actually a lot of MMOs that appear to possibly be winding down as their developers have quietly begun work on new MMOs to replace them.
I mean,
still,
Shadowlands
SWTOR is a largely single-player experience, and if you've never done it before, it could be a lot of fun.
Although, see, the thing with Warlords of Draenor is we were just left with nothing for months. I forgot how many months towards the end there. At least in Shadowlands, they gave us faded rating at the end, right, to keep you busy. Warlords had nothing, literally nothing. You could do nothing in that game for months on end, almost a year at the end. So that's why I say it was more like WoD.
Particularly if you're a fan of the Star Wars universe. You'll get the Star Wars music, art, stories, and of course,
the roughest part about Shadowlands was the middle. Patch 9.1 and all that. That was fucking horrible. That was some of the worst WoW content ever. That was when it got really bad. But at the end, they picked up the pace.
The game features 8 classes, split 4 and 4 between Jedi and the Sith faction, with a lot of overlap between the classes on each side, almost as if one side was a near mirror image of the other side. It's not a bad game to pick up and play with friends, as it does feature level scaling, which has resulted in the questing experience being very easy. So you'll definitely be jumping in for the story rather than the challenge. So what does the population look like? Well, it's been a bit all over the place. The game has done a decent job of holding a relatively flat level of interest, although it's definitely been on the decline as of late. Still, it's been enough to keep it ahead of EVE Online and is the 12th most popular MMO in the world. That's nothing to sneeze at. Next up at number 11 is New World. New World went from not being on this list to being an incredible contender, sitting firmly in the middle of the list. It's now slid 4 positions from number 7.
So far, this is the newest, though. It's kind of sad that it's this far down, but still respectable.
To number 11 since the last time we checked it at the beginning of the year. While it's not quite as popular as when it dropped its fresh start servers last year, it's still very respectable and getting better with every quarter. I'm expecting it to jump a few places again when it drops its next expansion. Most notably, this expansion is where New World gets mounts, among other things. Yes, you heard me. They will finally have mounts in New World.
That's pretty big.
I'm very curious to see how they've chosen to implement mounts in this game. Did they go with the basic 4-legged creatures that move fast, or did they go more of a Guild Wars 2 route? Time will tell, but the expansion looks like it will.
I didn't know that. They're getting mounts. New World, you know, it had potential. It still does, but I feel like Amazon's abandoning it because they're doing the Lord of the Rings MMO now. So I wonder what they're going to do with New World. They're going to maintain 2 MMOs? I don't know.
Will be huge for the game. I respect the developers a lot for not giving up on this game.
It's a great casual like gathering simulator too. If you ever want to like get into, if you enjoy like chopping down trees and shit, New World does it better than any game.
And making it better with every quarter. And let's be honest, that was essential for its survival. The game is usually on sale for anywhere between $20 and $40, and that's it. You get the whole game for a single purchase. It's also recently added a seasonal battle pass to the game, avoiding the mandatory subscription that many MMOs take. New World features a massive seamless open world for you to explore, and that's where it really shines. It shines when you're out exploring, questing, killing, and gathering, and all the things you stumble into along the way. Every tree, bush, or rock can be gathered to level up your crafting and gathering. New World features the holy trinity of tank, healer, and DPS, and has some incredibly challenging dungeons and a mutation system for those dungeons that basically act as a Mythic Plus system from WoW. The content can be incredibly fun, but it can also be incredibly difficult to find groups, but this is getting better with every major patch. New World has added its first raid and has some 20-man and 40-man raid content on the way. Huge things in the works. It's going to be fun to follow.
I wish WoW would bring back 40-man raid content. I miss it, man. Those big, fat, big dick raids going in, penetrating the entire raid. Complete chaos, but I love seeing that many people on my screen all at once. Something about it is just exciting. 40-man raids. Bring them back, man.
If we look at the trends for the game, it steadily went up for a long time there as it approached the launch of the Fresh Start servers after the Brimstone Sands expansion.
That was the launch.
Now it's been settling back down, likely due to the fact that while the content that's in the game is great, it's still very light on content compared to its more seasoned counterparts. This next expansion should help with that. Still, it's possible to have a fantastic couple of months in the game and do everything it has to offer right now, which is exactly what I think a lot of players have done. They're going in, having a lot of fun, and then running out of things to do in this young MMO. I fully expect many of them to return for the next expansion in the fall. The first MMO on the list to make it into the top 10 is Elder Scrolls Online, slipping two places from number 8 to number 10 as a result of a couple of MMOs popping off here recently. Elder Scrolls Online is a beautiful theme park MMO set in the Elder Scrolls universe and takes place about 950 years before Skyrim. This is one of the youngest games on the list despite being 8 years old and features the holy trinity of tank, healer, and DPS. ESO has 12-player raids, 4-player dungeons.
I honestly like the holy trinity. I don't like the whole gear-based class system or anything like that. I do like the traditional way of picking a class in an MMO. I don't know why everyone's tried to iterate on it, but I just think it's the best way to do it.
As well as a ton of single-player content for you to enjoy. There are 3 tiers of difficulty for each of these types of content, allowing players to push themselves farther and farther. It definitely leans toward the casual MMO player and stands out as one of the more story-driven MMO experiences out there. Every quest, and I do mean every single one, is voice-acted, every single word of it. ESO is a buy-to-play MMO with an optional sub, so if you want, you can just pick up the base.
When Elder Scrolls came out, wasn't it sub-based? Then they changed it? I'm pretty sure it was. But ESO, in terms of storyline, I'm sure they do a great job because Elder Scrolls in general is some great story content.
This game and get hundreds of hours of content out of it. Elder Scrolls Online features action combat, which is often a love it or hate it topic for players that try this MMO out. If you're used to tab targeting MMOs of old, it's going to take a little bit of time to get used to this MMO's combat.
I also prefer tab targeting MMOs. I don't know why. I just do.
Great news for ESO, however, as it just released an amazing expansion, Necrom, leaving the community reinvigorated for the future. This expansion added 2 new zones and a brand new class, among other things. The population is still very healthy for this game, and thanks to the fact that it features mega servers, the population is not fragmented like most other MMOs, which means you won't have any problems finding other people to play with. Now,
Oh shit, look at that, number 9. I think I know that game. I was going to say one other thing. They just said they have mega servers. That's a great thing for ESO. And it would be great for a while, too. Look, the first MMO that creates, I don't know, what would they call it? Super giant servers? I don't know what they would call it. Just single server MMO. The first MMO that can do a single server, they will be champs. Single server MMO is where it needs to go. Because that would just eliminate a lot of population issues. And MMOs are really thrive on having a big population. Population matters in an MMO. It really does. Play the greatest MMO ever. If you're the only one playing it, it's shitty. You need a lot of people. No phasing, no sharding or whatever. Just fucking make it one server. And 40-man rates. Bring it all back.
Sliding 4 places from number 5 to number 9 on the list, Classic WoW. In March of 2017, Blizzard finally caved and announced they would be making World of Warcraft Classic. World of Warcraft Classic launched to massive appeal, much to the surprise of Blizzard, who had thought there was no way players would want a Classic server. This spin-off of the retail version of the game was so popular that at one point it held down spot number 5 on the list. But as time passes, its player base continues to slide from its once great heights. It is insane that the Classic version of an MMO sits this high on the list, but this isn't the only MMO that's achieved that, as we'll discuss later. World of Warcraft Classic was a return to WoW before its first expansion, and then in 2021 it added the Burning Crusade, and last year Wrath of the Lich King, which was another hit with the community. WoW Classic is the classic MMO experience through and through, slower combat and a strict adherence to the Holy Trinity.
With hardcore WoW popularity, I actually thought it would be higher than 9.
Of tank, healer, and DPS. It was also a direct mainline injection of nostalgia for every MMO veteran that lived through the early years of WoW. It's going to be interesting to see how long this nostalgia-fueled trip through classic WoW can maintain its steam. Some fear that Wrath was the peak of the WoW experience for many and will be the peak of the classic experience, but others aren't convinced. If we look at Google Trends for WoW Classic, we can see its explosive launch in 2019, followed by a moderate level of interest.
I think this is where hardcore kicked off.
the months and years to follow, though that interest is clearly declining recently due to two things. One, players are simply beating the content. They've cleared the raid enough times to either have the gear or not want to run it anymore, and other players left because they are simply burning out on the game. Recently, Hardcore WoW Classic has gained a lot of traction, and official hardcore servers are being spun up by Blizzard, so keep an eye out for that if you're looking for a spicier WoW Classic experience.
Based on the fact he's talking about it, it's probably included here.
Where upon dying, your character is deleted forever. WoW Classic was number 5 on the list last time I made it, and it slid to number 9 now. Will it jump higher again in the future?
When official hardcore servers come out, I'm sure it'll climb back up the list.
Or is it getting less appealing the farther it gets from vanilla WoW? It's going to be interesting to find out. Still, its population is pretty impressive for a spin-off of an existing MMO, and further proof that there is still a strong appetite for the classic MMO experience out there. Moving up one spot to number 8 from number 9 is RuneScape 3, a fantasy MMORPG originally built with Java to be played inside of your browser.
Okay, game came out in 2001. It's number 8 still. Jeez.
Kids were playing this MMO on library computers all over back in the early 2000s, over 20 years later, and this game is still outrageously popular. So let's take a look at it. RuneScape is interesting because there's RuneScape and then there's old school RuneScape. We'll get to old school RuneScape later, but right now we'll talk about RuneScape. RuneScape was originally released all the way back in 2001 as a browser game, but that's largely changed as of 2016. The browser version was mostly replaced by a standalone client. RuneScape is a game where you can level anything by doing that thing, level fishing by fishing, level magic by using magic. It's a grindy MMO with tons of content, seeing as it's been getting new content for over 20 years. As much as RuneScape has evolved past its sibling old school RuneScape, it's still very much an old school MMO experience. Slow-paced fights, basic combat, and not so state-of-the-art graphics. RuneScape did add a WoW-like ability system and a very contentious cash shop as it aged, leading to the birth of its younger, older sibling, old school RuneScape, which we'll talk about later in this video. The beta
So basically, old school RuneScape is RuneScape without the cash shop. That's the gist of what I'm getting here.
When nature of this cash shop didn't go over well with the community, and in a strange but telling twist, the classic version of the game without the pay-to-win cash shop has ended up with more players than the modern version.
Oh, I wonder if he put old school RuneScape on this list too. It's higher than number 8. That's crazy.
Look at the trend for RuneScape, you can see how insanely popular it was back in the mid-2000s. Absolutely massive popularity. If you were an MMO player and you weren't playing WoW, there was a good chance you had dabbled in some RuneScape. RuneScape has lost a lot of players in the last decade, probably many of whom went to its sibling old school RuneScape. If you've been enjoying this video, be sure to subscribe for more MMO content. Coming in at number 7 is Guild Wars 2, which is the first MMO on this list to move up multiple places, jumping from number 11.
I still remember I almost did play Guild Wars. I remember being at Target with my mom, as I usually was, and seeing Guild Wars as a purchasable like box game, and I really got close to buying it. And I was playing WoW at this time, but I really got close to doing this. Wait, 2012? I wouldn't have been there with my mom. I was 22. Maybe I was. I don't know.
11 to number 7, and it likely won't stop there.
I just remember that being there, seeing the game, and thinking about buying it.
It's approaching its next expansion called Secrets of the Obscure. This expansion will feature a massive combat overhaul, so if you've tried it before but didn't care for the combat, it might be worth revisiting. It's also worth pointing out that on average, Guild Wars has been trending up for the last few years, which we don't see very often in games this age.
Well, supposedly everyone says dragon riding was taken from Guild Wars, right?
This is in large part due to its very successful End of Dragons expansion, as well as releasing the game on Steam, greatly helping to increase its visibility, something it has always seemed to lack. Guild Wars 2 had an explosive launch back in 2012 and has since been one of the most popular MMOs on the market. Guild Wars 2 is a free-to-play MMORPG developed by ArenaNet and published by NCSoft. It's worth noting that since it was developed by ArenaNet, it won't feel like an NCSoft game. I'll let you decide if that's a good or a bad thing. As MMOs go, Guild Wars does an excellent job of encouraging zone exploration and completion, and tried hard to break the mold of having players run from one yellow exclamation mark to the other, and largely succeeded in these efforts. If you try it out, you'll see what I mean. It's a very unique questing experience. I like it. Guild Wars 2 features a
Is Guild Wars 2 tab targeting? I think it is.
Generous free trial. The first 80 levels are free, and the game does not feature a sub, not even one of those and mount systems that Guild Wars 2 has become known for. They did recently overhaul the new player experience a bit for their Steam launch, which has allowed you to get temporary access to a mount, just so you can get a taste of what that's like. If you've watched my coverage of Guild Wars 2 before, you'll know that it's the mounts and the exploration that I fell in love with. Sprinting around on the mounts in the game, and then going high up on
I guess Guild Wars 2 has done great great freaking job with mounts, because supposedly Blizzard took inspiration from them.
And then jumping off and then opening my glider as I fell back to the ground was just such a uniquely fun experience. I felt for a long time that the mounts in Guild Wars 2 were the best of any MMO, and it wasn't even close. Blizzard finally noticed and more or less copy and pasted the Griffin into World of Warcraft, which also felt amazing over there, by the way. The Guild Wars 2 main story quest is all entirely voice acted. Both your character and the characters you interact with are voiced. This adds a lot to the story as you get to see your character laugh and cry and go through all the emotions that dialogue boxes are never able to convey in that level of detail. One of the most memorable parts of Guild Wars 2 are the world events, where upwards of 100 players group up to take down dragons the size of skyscrapers.
Damn, that's badass. I love that kind of shit. I love just giant. That's why I said Blizzard should bring back 40-man raids. Even world. I love world content where it's just unlimited players. Just uncap that shit. That's why I say like these giant mega servers, no server division. That would be an amazing feature for an MMO.
Are truly a sight to behold, and it's really cool to see that many people in the community all get together to take things down. How's Guild Wars 2 trending now? Well, it's actually been slowly growing since late 2020, early 2021, while other MMOs have bled players, helping it move up 4 spots on this list. All of this while the devs are quietly building a new unannounced MMO. Pretty impressive. Coming in at number 6 is Lost Ark, the youngest MMO on this list, which has fallen 2 places, going from number 4.
Is this the pay-to-win part of the rankings now?
To number 6. Lost Ark is a free-to-play top-down MMORPG that launched in the East in 2019 and then finally here in the West in 2022. Like I said before, Lost Ark is a beautiful MMO that kind of feels like Diablo and Final Fantasy had a baby, and then that baby grew up to have a gambling addiction. The game itself is well polished and has loads of content thanks to the fact that it launched years earlier in the East, but there's been a deep sense of dissatisfaction in the game's community lately. It does have a cash shop and a gear progression system that will frequently remind you of its Eastern MMO roots. The game is absolutely pay to win, or if you prefer, you can
maximum pay to win. It's gambling style pay to win, man.
Call it pay for power, but it is also one of the few major MMOs that you can choose to play for completely free. There are more currencies than you can count, and your gear
you can play for free if you want to be whale food. That's essentially what you'll be if you play this game for free.
Progression involves multiple layers of gambling said currencies. Despite its top-down view, it does feature dungeons and raids, and these are definitely some of the most popular content the game has to offer. The ultimate goal in Lost Ark is to sail around the world and collect all of the things while increasing your character's power. Yeah, you heard me right. It's got sailing, and it's pretty fun. One of Lost Ark's biggest strengths is its combat, as a lot of players will tell you the combat is extremely satisfying. On top of that, the game features over 17 different classes with more on the way, each with their own looking feel, which makes sure that anyone can find the right class for them. If we look at Lost Ark's trends, we can see that interest in Lost Ark exploded in February of 2022 when it launched here in the West, and then quickly dropped back down below World of Warcraft while still remaining above heavy hitters like WoW Classic, BDO, and ESO. Last time I made this video, Lost Ark was fairly new, and I was curious to see how well it would retain its players. It's still sitting here at number 6 on the list, though it has been
probably anyone who sank an like insane amount of money in it is still playing.
Further and further down each time I update this list. Lost Ark gets a lot of flack for having a lot of bots, and if you booted up the game recently, that's been pretty fair. This isn't to say that it doesn't have a lot of real players as well, as it's unlikely Google Trends are swayed by bots in the same way that, say, its Steam charts are. Perhaps most surprising on this list is going to be number 5. Seeing the most aggressive leap at the time of this update is MapleStory, moving from number 10 to number 5, due to a massive spike in the game in recent months. I'm not sure that this will hold, but for now, it gets to claim
this game came out in 2005. I never heard of this game. What the hell?
5th spot. MapleStory launched in 2003 in the East and 2005 in the West. This game was a gateway MMORPG for a lot of modern-day MMO players. It was immensely successful and still manages to stay relevant nearly 2 decades later.
I swear, I've never heard of MapleStory. I've really never heard of this.
Is a free-to-play 2D side-scrolling massively multiplayer online role-playing game developed by Wizet and published by Nexon. So far the game has reached over 260 million registered users worldwide and grossed over $3 billion in lifetime revenue. To put that into perspective, the only MMO that comes close to having that many people try it is World of Warcraft. It's got around 42 different classes for you to try and offers an incredible,
we haven't seen retail WoW yet. We're in the top 5.
Unique and accessible experience. So if your computer specs aren't the greatest, or if you want something completely different, perhaps give this game a try. It's got 2 decades worth of content, so there's plenty for you to do. How's interest in the game been? Well, recently its interest exploded, propelling it 5 places, but how long will that hold for this How's interest in the game?
By the way, I know I said 100K earlier on that. That's fucking stupid. No MMO's ever hit 100K. I think Wrath hit like 18 at its peak or something. This is a percentage-based chart, of course. 100 is 100%.
Game banned. Well, recently its interest exploded, propelling it 5 places, but how long will that hold for this 20-year-old MMO? Another MMO that has recently moved up in the world is Black Desert Online.
Big titties online. That's what when we watched that freaking video, it's on the YouTube channel. Oh my god. The best hit graphics of any MMO. Black Desert Online.
And moving up 2 places from the last time I made this list, from number 6 to number 4. Video is one giant seamless world. You can run from one side to the other without any load screens. And if you ask someone why they play BDO, it's almost always going to be the combat. That and how
Tits. That's the reason. Tits.
How beautiful the game is.
2 reasons, I should say.
BDO is an open world game with very little in the way of instance content. You don't just play BDO for dungeons and raids, you play BDO to kill things out in the open world.
Well, we're going to get ships in World of Warcraft in the next expansion. I've already guaranteed that. We are getting ships, and I'm not talking about WAD shipyard ships. We're getting full-blown customizable ships. It's coming. Don't you worry. And the fact that it's in another MMO already, even more guarantees that we're getting it, because that's what Blizzard does. They just take shit from other MMOs and put it in their game. Polish it up.
For hours just to gain a few percent of level. BDO is very much a grindy game. Also very important to note is that it is an always-on PvP game. Once you hit 50, the PvP is on. Anyone can kill you anytime. That seems like something you might want to know. The other things you'll hear players talk about when it comes to BDO is the gear upgrade system, which oftentimes is described as one of the most frustrating gear upgrade systems in any MMO, involving a lot of chance and perhaps some gambling. And you know how gambling goes. The house always wins. BDO features a ton of unique classes and continues to actively update the game, but how is the game's population trending as of late? Let's take a look at Google Trends here. If we look at the charts here, we can see that the game's launch was incredible and garnered a ton of interest. It bled players for a long time, as MMOs do, but its recent expansion saw a significant increase in interest in the game. This recent expansion focused on questing and bossing, 2 things the game never really focused on before, and it seems to be paying off in spades. If you tried BDO...
You know, everybody who's commented on the last time I talked about Black Desert Online on that YouTube video, everyone says that too, that it's very grindy. If you're into grinding, you'll like it. So that's right. Tits and grinder. BDO Online summary.
Before, and it was too grindy, it might be worth trying again for its Land of the Morning Light expansion. Continuing to hold down the 3rd position is Old School RuneScape. Old School RuneScape launched in 2013 and continued to climb as if it is completely unaware that MMOs are supposed to become less popular with age. You can play this game on a computer, a phone, and probably a toaster. The system requirements are so low that this is probably the most accessible MMO out there, and I think it owes a lot of its success to this. On top of that, Old School RuneScape is...
I bet you a lot of people play it on their phones. I do. I'm not saying that as a joke. I actually do. This
game run by the players, with each significant change voted on by the player base. Old School RuneScape launched as a result of the community not loving some of the changes that were made to the game. Retail RuneScape added WoW-like abilities and a cash shop that many accused of introducing pay-to-win to the game. And so the community begged the developers for the...
You can play this in your brain.
Creation of Old School RuneScape. Jagex finally agreed and created servers that were based on the 2007 version of the game. RuneScape does not have the player follow a linear storyline, but instead has the player choose...
He said some jails use RuneScape Gold as cash. That's funny if that's true.
Their own path through the game. Players can choose to kill monsters, go off questing, or level up one of their many different skills. Old School RuneScape is a make the numbers go up game. You skill up, you level up your crafting, your sword wielding, your fishing, anything you can think of, you can level it up, and a lot of people enjoy doing this. RuneScape is a very sandboxy MMO that allows for a lot of AFK skilling, and thanks to its slow pace and incredibly low computer requirements, it's very accessible. It's got some pretty involved quests that would be near impossible to figure out with the help of add-ons and guides, but it's as old school as it gets, with a very clunky combat system and user interface. It will take some time and some patience to get used to it if you're going to try it for the first time in 2023. Old School RuneScape was even made available on Android and iOS and was the most downloaded mobile game in 8 different countries in less than 2 weeks, and I'd wager this is a big part of why it's so popular. Old School RuneScape has been so successful that its active player count has now far eclipsed retail RuneScape and a lot of other MMOs for that matter. If we look at how the game has trended on Google, we can see by the line here that it has held pretty persistent interest, spending most of its time just behind World of Warcraft and ahead of everything else. By the numbers, it appears that old school RuneScape has landed on the 3rd spot, giving number 2 a run for its money. Pretty impressive for being born from a browser game that was released in 2001.
I mean, 1 and 2 I think are pretty obvious at this point. They got to be retail WoW and Final Fantasy. I just don't know what order they'll be in.
You can dismiss its success by saying it's all bots, but once again, that would fail to explain its massive presence on Google Trends. Next up, continuing to hold down the number 2 spot on the
the Final Fantasy weebs are going to be angry with this one. Oh, yeah. They're going to call for a recount, and then they're going to storm the White House. This is it.
List, the former, albeit briefly, number 1 MMO in the world, didn't know it wasn't supposed to age like wine, getting bigger year after year for a lot of years. In the last year, it's held steady, not really growing or shrinking, as it prepares to announce its next major expansion.
I have yet to play it.
An insane accomplishment for an MMO that launched to such a degree of failure that it shut the game down and relaunched. Final Fantasy XIV continues to be a story that gives hope to rocky MMO launches today. You can fix an imperfect MMO.
Let's be honest. Cat girls. That's the reason for Final Fantasy's success. Cat girls.
If you're willing to listen to the feedback of your fans and put the work in.
Wait,
Final Fantasy
XIV
is a fantasy MMORPG that places a massive focus on the story. The single-player story content comes first, and every piece of the game that follows is built in service to that end. The dungeons are unlocked as part of the story, the trials are unlocked and woven into the story. Some of the most memorable cutscenes in the game are delivered in the middle of a trial while you're fighting for your life. Final Fantasy XIV is a master storyteller. I've
heard Final Fantasy XIV has good storytelling, for sure.
Features 20 different classes and the holy trinity of tank, healer, and DPS. Final Fantasy XIV has a free trial where you can play the game's first 60 levels for free. After that, you'll have to buy the game and pay the mandatory sub. Thanks to this mandatory sub, however, this game is free of pay to win. It's free of loot boxes, and it has hundreds of cosmetics and mounts that you can earn in-game by playing the game. It's going to be fascinating to watch and see what direction they go with the story in their next expansion, and just as importantly, how many people show up. Will it continue to be one of the only MMOs that experiences long-term growth? If we look at how Final Fantasy XIV is trending on Google, it's been battling WoW for the top spot. With the launch of Dragonflight, all of that changed. Which brings us to, not surprisingly, number 1 on the list.
Wow, W-O-W, wow. Wow, haters gonna hate. Haters gonna say it ain't real. Haters gonna say it's fake. Haters gonna lose their shit? I don't know.
World of Warcraft. Continuing to hold down the top spot with a sizable gap between
Look at that shit. Oh my god, there's a big gap here.
It and the next biggest MMO.
When did it get closest? March? Look at that, pretty close in March.
Lead up to Dragonflight propelled it above Final Fantasy XIV, and it's held on to a lot of that interest. Public opinion in the game has largely recovered since the self-inflicted wound that was the Shadowlands expansion. On top of
Dragonflight's a good expansion. You can talk all the shit you want. Shadowlands was horrible, sure, but Dragonflight's a good expansion.
That we should see Blizzard announce its next expansion at BlizzCon in November, which should be a huge boon for interest in the game. People have spent their entire lives playing World of Warcraft, with some players now clocking 18 years played. It's a testament to the massive appeal that this game was able to
garner. That's right. Donovan, that's everyone's excuse. Yep, dead genre. That's why WoW's at the top. Must be a dead genre.
World of Warcraft is a massive, seamless MMO that still handles scale better than almost any MMO I've played. You can see locations multiple zones away and get
movement, combat system, and combat fluidity in general. World of Warcraft is still miles ahead of any other game. I'll be completely honest with you guys. That's why I love it so much. That's why I think it's still the best. It is by far has the best environmental interactions. Movement, the feeling of your sword hitting something. All other MMOs just feel kind of janky. They feel weird when you hit something. WoW, no, you feel the hit. Feels good, man.
Get on your mount and then fly to them. This is something that a lot of MMOs created well after WoW are still unable to deliver on, thanks to them being broken into smaller zones. Despite its age, WoW still looks great, thanks to an art style that's aged incredibly well over the years and multiple engine overhauls. WoW features the trinity of tank, healer, and DPS, and has 13 unique classes, each with multiple different specs. There is a lot of single-player content for you to level and play your way through, as well as dungeons and raids. WoW's dungeons and raids are among some of the best out there, but be prepared to devote a good chunk of your time to them, as they are quite a bit longer than most MMOs, dungeons, and raids today. So what does interest in WoW look like according to Google Trends? You can see on this graph here how it absolutely...
Holy shit. Oh my god, look at that peak. The peakiest peak ever. What the hell?
dwarfs the competition in its prime. Looking at its popularity from 2004 to 2000.
What is this, 2017? Oh, you got Shadowlands here? That's what it is? Shadowlands time? Yeah, that is pretty
12,
bad.
nothing else even comes close. And while WoW continues to fall in popularity, when we zoom in and look at the last 5 years, there is still a substantial gap between the interest in WoW and the interest in every other MMO we've discussed so far. This titan in the industry is still just that, a titan in the industry.
Oh, and no, he is playing Shadowlands music in the background. Oh no.
With the success of Dragonflight, it's kept its spot at #1. In fact, WoW's rise wasn't overnight. It's also worth noting WoW's been on a bit of an upward trend for the last couple of years, but can it maintain its momentum this time? We'll check back in on it later in the year, but for now, it's #1 and it's not even close. It's been an amazing couple of years for MMOs. We've seen multiple MMOs.
No king rules forever, my son, and yet here we are. WoW is still on top.
Drop absolutely stunning expansions like WoW's Dragonflight, Guild Wars 2's End of Dragons, Final Fantasy XIV's Endwalker, ESO's Necrom, BDO's Land of the Morning Light, and New World's Brimstone Sands. There's also an amazing year ahead as we have an incoming Guild Wars 2, New World, Final Fantasy XIV, ESO, and World of Warcraft expansion set to be delivered within the next 12 months. Did any of the results on this list surprise you? Let me know down in the comments below. Which MMOs do you think are going to move up or down when I update this list again in 2024? And what will the addition of Throne and Liberty do to this list? Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel to find out, as I'll continue to cover MMOs like the degenerate MMO player I am. As always, massive shout out and a massive thank you to my YouTube members. To become a YouTube member, click the join button below for access to a private Discord channel, behind the scenes footage, and more. Sincerely, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. If you're not sure what to do next, swing by my Twitch stream over at twitch.tv/luckyghost, or watch one of the videos popping up on screen right now.
This was fun. I'm surprised, man. WoW's still #1. WoW and Classic WoW are in the top 10. That's crazy.